The sound of flesh meeting flesh echoed across the training ground like a gunshot. In that split second, 20 years of military service, countless commendations, and a promising career trajectory crumbled to dust. What happened next would become legend in military circles. A story whispered in mess halls and training academies about the day justice moved faster than lightning. And 4 colonels proved that some lines should never be crossed, no matter your rank, experience, or reputation. This is the true story of Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, whose moment of rage during a routine training exercise would cost him everything he had worked for. But more importantly, it's the story of courage, accountability, and how the right people in the right place at the right time can change everything in just minutes. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Benning's sprawling training complex as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez adjusted his cap and surveyed the group of recruits assembled before him. At 42, Rodriguez was what the military called a lifer, someone who had devoted their entire adult life to service. His weathered face told the story of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, of long nights in hostile territory, and of the kind of discipline that only comes from 2 decades of military precision.
Rodriguez had built his reputation on being tough but fair.
New recruits quickly learned that while he demanded excellence, he also invested genuine effort in their development. His training methods were rigorous, sometimes pushing soldiers to their absolute limits, but always with purpose. Those who served under him often credited Rodriguez with making them better soldiers and better people. But this particular morning would be different. Unknown to Rodriguez, his world was about to change forever, triggered by a confluence of personal stress, professional pressure, and one moment of catastrophic judgment. The day had started normally enough. Rodriguez had arrived at the training facility at 0500 hours, reviewing the day's schedule over black coffee that could strip paint. Today's session focused on hand-to-hand combat training, a critical component of military readiness that Rodriguez had taught hundreds of times. The 24 recruits in his charge represented the usual mix of backgrounds, ages, and experience levels that characterized modern military intake. Among them was Private First Class Sarah Mitchell, a 23-year-old from rural Ohio, who had joined the military to escape a cycle of poverty that had trapped 3 generations of her family. Mitchell stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, but what she lacked in physical stature, she made up for in determination and intelligence. She had consistently ranked in the top 3 of her class across all training modules and had earned respect from her peers through her unwavering work ethic. Mitchell had grown up in a household where domestic violence was commonplace. Her father's alcohol-fueled rages had terrorized the family for years, and she had developed a keen sensitivity to aggressive behavior in men. The military represented not just career opportunity for her, but escape from a world where women were often treated as second-class citizens. She approached her training with intensity, knowing that excellence was her only path to the independence she craved. Rodriguez began the morning session by reviewing basic defensive techniques. The recruits paired off, practicing blocks, escapes, and counterattacks under his watchful eye. He moved between the pairs, offering corrections, demonstrating proper form, and ensuring that safety protocols were followed. For the first hour, everything proceeded smoothly. The trouble began during the advanced grappling section. Rodriguez had paired the recruits according to weight and experience, but Mitchell found herself matched with Private Johnson, a former college wrestler who outweighed her by 60 pounds. During one exchange, Johnson applied a chokehold with too much force, causing Mitchell to tap out more aggressively than usual. Rodriguez had been dealing with personal problems that he had kept carefully hidden from his subordinates and superiors. His marriage of 18 years was crumbling, largely due to the accumulated stress of multiple deployments and his struggle to readjust to civilian life between tours. His wife had recently filed for separation, citing emotional distance and what she described as his increasing volatility at home. Additionally, his elderly father had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia, requiring care that Rodriguez felt unable to provide while maintaining his military commitments. These pressures had been building for months, affecting his sleep and emotional regulation. While he had managed to maintain professional composure during most interactions, the cracks in his facade were becoming harder to conceal. His fellow non-commissioned officers had noticed subtle changes in his demeanor, but military culture discouraged open discussion of personal problems, especially among leadership. When Mitchell tapped out forcefully, Rodriguez interpreted her action as disrespectful rather than defensive. In his current state of mind, already primed for conflict by weeks of accumulated stress, he saw her behavior as challenging his authority in front of the other recruits. What should have been a routine training moment triggered something deeper and more dangerous. Rodriguez approached Mitchell with visible agitation. His voice carried an edge that made the other recruits stop their practice and turn to watch. He demanded that she repeat the exercise, criticizing her technique in terms that went beyond professional instruction. Mitchell, recognizing the shift in tone and feeling the familiar fear that had characterized her childhood, responded with increasing defensiveness. The situation escalated rapidly. Rodriguez accused Mitchell of not taking training seriously, of disrespecting his instruction, and of setting a poor example for the other recruits. Mitchell, drawing on reserves of courage that had helped her survive her father's abuse, refused to back down from what she perceived as unfair treatment. She maintained her position respectfully but firmly, stating that she had followed protocols correctly. What happened next would be seared into the memory of every person present. Rodriguez's frustration boiled over into rage. In a moment that would define the rest of his life, he struck Mitchell across the face with an open hand, the sound echoing across the training ground like a rifle crack. The blow was hard enough to knock her backward and split her lip, sending blood trickling down her chin. The training ground fell into stunned silence. 23 recruits stood frozen, processing what they had just witnessed. Mitchell remained standing, blood on her face, but her eyes blazing with defiance rather than submission. Rodriguez seemed to realize immediately what he had done, his anger replaced by a look of horror as he comprehended the magnitude of his action. Private Jackson, one of the recruits who had been paired with Mitchell earlier in the session, later described the moment as surreal. The absolute authority that Rodriguez represented, the embodiment of military discipline and professionalism, had just been shattered by a single act of violence that violated everything they had been taught about military values and proper conduct. But unknown to Rodriguez, his moment of poor judgment had been witnessed by more than just the recruits under his command. A routine inspection tour was taking place that morning, and 4 colonels from the base command structure had been observing training activities across the facility. Colonel James Patterson, Colonel Maria Santos, Colonel David Chen, and Colonel Robert Williams had been making their way through various training areas, evaluating programs and personnel as part of a quarterly assessment. The colonels had positioned themselves on an elevated observation deck that provided clear sightlines to multiple training areas. They had been focused on a different group when the commotion in Rodriguez's area caught their attention. All 4 had military experience spanning decades, and they immediately recognized the significance of what they were witnessing. Colonel Patterson, a decorated combat veteran with 30 years of service, had seen his share of training incidents, but nothing quite like this. As the senior officer present, he understood that the next few minutes would require decisive action that balanced justice, military protocol, and the welfare of everyone involved. Colonel Santos, one of the few female colonels on the base, had personal experience with gender-based discrimination and violence in military settings. She had spent much of her career advocating for stronger protections for female service members and had zero tolerance for any form of abuse, regardless of the perpetrator's rank or service record. Colonel Chen brought a different perspective as an officer who had risen through the ranks from enlisted status. He understood the pressures that non-commissioned officers faced and the delicate balance between maintaining discipline and treating subordinates with respect. His experience had taught him that good soldiers could make terrible mistakes, but the consequences were essential for maintaining unit integrity. Colonel Williams, the youngest of the 4, had extensive experience in military justice and understood the legal implications of what they had just witnessed. He knew that Rodriguez's action constituted assault under military law and that failure to respond appropriately would compromise not only justice for Mitchell, but also the authority and credibility of the entire command structure. The 4 colonels exchanged glances, each understanding that they were about to become part of a story that would be remembered long after their own military careers ended. They had witnessed an action that demanded immediate response, and their next decisions would either uphold or undermine the principles they had sworn to protect. As Rodriguez stood over Mitchell, seemingly paralyzed by the realization of what he had done, the colonels began moving toward the training ground with purposeful strides. The recruits remained frozen in place, uncertain whether they should assist Mitchell, confront Rodriguez, or simply wait for someone else to take control of the situation. Mitchell wiped blood from her lip with the back of her hand, her training kicking in despite the shock and pain. She maintained military bearing, standing at attention despite what had just occurred. Her response would later be cited as an example of remarkable composure under extreme circumstances, demonstrating the kind of character that the military sought to develop in all service members. Rodriguez's career, built over 2 decades of dedicated service, now hung in the balance. His moment of rage had been witnessed by the wrong people at the wrong time, and the consequences would be swift and irreversible. As the colonels approached, Rodriguez could see his future crystallizing before his eyes, a future very different from the one he had imagined when he woke up that morning. The training ground incident had lasted less than 2 minutes from start to finish, but its repercussions would extend far beyond that morning. For Mitchell, it would become a defining moment that tested her resolve and commitment to military service. For the other recruits, it would serve as a powerful lesson about accountability and justice. For the 4 colonels, it would represent a test of their leadership and moral courage, and for Rodriguez, it would mark the end of everything he had worked to achieve, a reminder that in the military, as in life, some actions have consequences that cannot be undone, no matter how exemplary one's previous service or how sincere one's regret. Colonel James Patterson reached the training ground first, his stride measured but urgent. Behind him, the other 3 colonels maintained formation, their expressions grave as they processed what they had witnessed. The 23 recruits remained frozen in place, uncertain how to respond to the unprecedented situation unfolding before them. Private Mitchell continued to stand at attention, blood from her split lip now dried against her chin, while Staff Sergeant Rodriguez appeared to be emerging from his shock-induced paralysis. Patterson's voice cut through the morning air with the authority of 3 decades in uniform. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, step away from the recruit and assume the position of attention. The command carried the weight of absolute authority, delivered in the tone that had commanded respect from generals and privates alike throughout Patterson's distinguished career. Rodriguez snapped to attention automatically, 20 years of conditioning overriding his emotional state. His face had gone pale as he recognized the colonels approaching, understanding immediately that his career was not just in jeopardy. It was effectively over. The muscle memory of military discipline carried him through the motions even as his mind raced through the implications of what had just occurred. Colonel Santos moved directly to Mitchell, her approach careful and deliberate. As a woman who had navigated the challenges of military service for over 2 decades, she understood the complex dynamics at play. Her voice was steady but compassionate as she addressed the young recruit. "Private Mitchell, are you injured? Do you require medical attention?" Mitchell's response demonstrated the military bearing that had earned her respect throughout training. Despite the trauma of the assault and the intimidating presence of 4 colonels, she maintained composure and spoke clearly. "Ma'am, I am functional and ready to continue training if required." Her words were precise, professional, but Santos could see the slight tremor in her hands and the defiance still burning in her eyes. Colonel Chen had been observing the other recruits, noting their reactions and body language. He understood that this incident would affect not just the immediate participants, but every witness present. These young soldiers were learning crucial lessons about military justice, leadership accountability, and the importance of standing up for what was right. His responsibility extended beyond the immediate crisis to the long-term impact on military culture and values. Colonel Williams began documenting the scene, his legal training automatically cataloging details that would become crucial in the proceedings to follow. He noted the time, weather conditions, number of witnesses, and physical evidence of the assault. His experience in military justice had taught him that proper documentation in the immediate aftermath of an incident could make the difference between successful prosecution and a case that fell apart due to procedural errors. Patterson addressed Rodriguez directly, his tone conveying both authority and disappointment. "Staff Sergeant, you will explain your actions immediately. What caused you to strike this recruit?" The question was not seeking justification. Patterson had witnessed the assault and understood its inexcusable nature, but rather establishing a formal record of Rodriguez's response for the proceedings that would inevitably follow. Rodriguez struggled to find words that could somehow explain or minimize his actions. The personal pressures that had contributed to his loss of control seemed inadequate now, facing the consequences of his behavior. "Sir, The recruit was being insubordinate during training. I lost my temper and acted inappropriately. There is no excuse for my actions, sir." His admission, while honest, only confirmed what the colonels had observed. Patterson nodded grimly, appreciating Rodriguez's honesty while recognizing that it changed nothing about the severity of the situation. In military culture, striking a subordinate represented not just assault, but a fundamental violation of the trust that held military units together. Santos continued her assessment of Mitchell, noting the split lip and slight bruising that was beginning to form on her cheek. More importantly, she was evaluating the psychological impact of the assault. Mitchell's military bearing remained intact, but Santos could see signs of the controlled anger and determination that would serve her well in the challenging road ahead. "Private Mitchell," Santos said quietly, "you will receive immediate medical evaluation and documentation of your injuries. You will also be assigned a victim advocate to ensure your rights are protected throughout this process, Do you understand? Mitchell nodded, grateful for the colonel's obvious concern and professionalism. Chen addressed the other recruits who had been standing at attention since the colonels arrived. All recruits will return to barracks immediately and await further instruction. You will not discuss this incident among yourselves or with anyone outside this chain of command until you receive official briefings. This is not merely a suggestion. It is a direct order that will be enforced. The recruits acknowledged the order and began moving toward the barracks with obvious relief at being dismissed from the uncomfortable situation. Williams approached Patterson with the preliminary documentation he had prepared. The two colonels conferred quietly, discussing the immediate steps required to handle the situation according to military protocol. Both understood that the next few hours would be crucial in ensuring that justice was served while maintaining the integrity of the military justice system. Rodriguez remained at attention, watching his career disintegrate in real time. He thought about his wife's separation papers, his father's deteriorating condition, and now this moment of catastrophic judgment that would eliminate any possibility of salvaging his military future. The weight of 20 years of service, countless commendations, and previously exemplary conduct record seemed meaningless in the face of those few seconds of violence. Patterson made the first critical decision. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you are hereby relieved of all training responsibilities pending investigation of this incident. You will surrender your weapon and training materials to Colonel Williams immediately. The formality of the action underscored its seriousness. Rodriguez was being removed from any position where he could influence or potentially retaliate against recruits. Santos had completed her initial assessment of Mitchell and was coordinating with base medical personnel via her radio. The young recruit would receive immediate medical attention, both for her physical injuries and for psychological evaluation. Santos understood that proper care in the immediate aftermath of trauma could significantly impact long-term recovery and Mitchell's ability to continue her military service successfully. Chen was developing the broader response strategy, considering the impact on the other recruits, the training program, and base morale. An incident of this magnitude could not be contained quietly. Too many people had witnessed it, and attempting to cover it up would only create larger problems. The challenge was managing the information flow to ensure accurate reporting while preventing rumors and speculation from undermining confidence in military leadership. Williams was already preparing the formal charges that would be filed against Rodriguez. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Rodriguez faced charges of assault, conduct unbecoming a non-commissioned officer, and violation of his oath of service. Each charge carried significant potential penalties, including reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay and benefits, and dismissal from service. As medical personnel arrived to attend to Mitchell, Santos briefed them on the situation and ensured that proper documentation protocols were followed. The medical evaluation would become crucial evidence in the case against Rodriguez, and Santos wanted to ensure that nothing was overlooked or mishandled. Patterson gathered the four colonels for a brief conference to coordinate their response. Each brought different expertise and perspectives, but all agreed on the fundamental principles that would guide their actions: zero tolerance for violence against subordinates, commitment to transparent and fair process, and ensuring that justice served both the victim and the broader military community. The speed of their response reflected both the seriousness of the incident and the professionalism of the officers involved. Within 30 minutes of the assault, Rodriguez had been relieved of duty. Mitchell was receiving medical care, witnesses had been secured, and formal charges were being prepared. The efficiency demonstrated why these four officers held colonel rank and why their reputations for leadership and integrity were well established. Rodriguez was escorted to the base commander's office, where he would face immediate administrative action while criminal charges were being prepared. His access to base facilities was restricted, and he was assigned quarters separate from the recruit training areas. The military moved quickly to prevent any possibility of continued contact between Rodriguez and his potential victims or witnesses. Mitchell's medical evaluation confirmed a split lip and facial bruising, but revealed no serious injuries. More importantly, the psychological evaluation indicated that, while she was understandably shaken by the assault, her determination to continue military service remained strong. Her resilience impressed the medical staff and reinforced Santos's initial assessment of her character. The other recruits were debriefed by Chen and military police investigators, who documented their accounts of the incident. Their statements were remarkably consistent, describing Rodriguez's escalating agitation, Mitchell's professional behavior, and the shocking nature of the assault. Several recruits mentioned that they had never seen anything like it during their training and were grateful for the quick response from the colonels. News of the incident began spreading throughout the base despite orders for discretion. Military communities are small and interconnected, and an incident involving 4 colonels and criminal charges against a staff sergeant could not remain secret for long. The base command made the decision to address the situation proactively, rather than allow rumors and speculation to fill the information vacuum. By afternoon, Rodriguez was facing a preliminary hearing before the base commander, with the 4 colonels providing testimony about what they had witnessed. The hearing was not intended to determine guilt or innocence, that would come later through formal court-martial proceedings, but rather to establish probable cause for the charges and determine appropriate interim measures. Rodriguez's military defense counsel arrived to represent him during the proceedings. While the evidence against him was overwhelming, his attorney's role was to ensure that his rights were protected and that proper procedures were followed. The attorney quickly recognized that the case was not winnable from a factual standpoint, but could potentially be managed to minimize the severity of consequences. The base commander, Brigadier General Sarah Thompson, had been briefed on the situation by Patterson and was prepared to take decisive action. Thompson had built her career on the principles of accountability and integrity, and she viewed the incident as a test of military values and leadership. Her response would send a message throughout the base about acceptable conduct and consequences for violations. Mitchell was assigned a victim advocate, Major Lisa Rodriguez, no relation to the accused, who specialized in supporting military personnel through criminal justice proceedings. Major Rodriguez's first priority was ensuring that Mitchell understood her rights and options while helping her navigate the complex process ahead. The preliminary hearing lasted 2 hours and resulted in formal charges being filed against Rodriguez. He was formally charged with assault under Article 128 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline under Article 134, and violation of his oath as a non-commissioned officer. The charges carried potential penalties ranging from reduction in rank and forfeiture of pay to dismissal from service and confinement. Rodriguez was released pending court-martial proceedings but remained restricted to base and prohibited from any contact with Mitchell or the recruit witnesses. His security clearance was suspended, and he was assigned to administrative duties under close supervision. The message was clear. While he retained the presumption of innocence until trial, the military was taking no chances with the safety of potential victims or witnesses. As news of the charges spread, reaction throughout the base was swift and largely supportive of the military leadership's response. Many personnel, particularly female service members, viewed the quick action by the 4 colonels as evidence that the military was serious about protecting its members from abuse and holding leaders accountable for their actions. The incident also sparked broader discussions about stress management, leadership accountability, and support systems for military personnel dealing with personal problems. While Rodriguez's actions were inexcusable, some recognized that better support systems might have prevented the situation from occurring in the first place. Mitchell's resilience and professionalism in the aftermath of the assault earned widespread respect. Her decision to continue with her military training sent a powerful message about strength and determination. She became an inspiration to other female recruits and a symbol of the military's commitment to protecting and supporting its members. The 4 colonels found themselves reluctantly thrust into the spotlight as their quick response became a case study in military leadership and accountability. Their actions demonstrated that rank and years of service provided no protection for those who violated military values and the trust placed in them by subordinates. As the base prepared for the court-martial proceedings that would ultimately determine Rodriguez's fate, the immediate aftermath of the incident had already accomplished something important. It had demonstrated that the military justice system could work swiftly and effectively when leadership was committed to upholding its values. The message resonated throughout the military community and beyond. Violence and abuse would not be tolerated, regardless of who perpetrated it or what pressures they claimed to be facing. The court-martial of Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez convened 3 weeks after the training ground incident in a military courtroom that had seen countless cases of military justice over the decades. The proceedings would test not only the guilt or innocence of Rodriguez but also the military's commitment to its stated values of honor, integrity, and accountability. The case had attracted attention far beyond Fort Benning, becoming a symbol of broader issues within military culture. Military Judge Colonel Patricia Hayes presided over the proceedings with the gravity befitting both the charges and their implications. Hayes, a veteran of military justice with over 15 years of experience in complex cases, understood that this trial would be scrutinized by military personnel, legal experts, and advocacy groups. Her responsibility was to ensure that justice was served fairly and transparently, setting a precedent for how similar cases would be handled in the future. The prosecution team, led by Major Andrew Sullivan, had prepared a straightforward case built on eyewitness testimony and physical evidence. Sullivan, a decorated military prosecutor with experience in high-profile cases, understood that while the facts were clear, The case's significance extended beyond the specific charges against Rodriguez. The prosecution's approach would demonstrate the military's commitment to protecting its members from abuse and holding leaders accountable for their actions. Rodriguez's defense attorney, Lieutenant Colonel Maria Vasquez, faced the challenging task of defending a client whose guilt was essentially undisputed. Vasquez, one of the most respected defense attorneys in military justice, had built her strategy around mitigation rather than denial. Her goal was not to excuse Rodriguez's behavior, but to present the context and circumstances that contributed to his moment of poor judgment, hoping to minimize the severity of his punishment. The courtroom was packed with military personnel, legal observers, and media representatives. Private First Class Sarah Mitchell sat in the front row, accompanied by her victim advocate and family members who had traveled from Ohio to support her. Her presence served as a powerful reminder of the human cost of Rodriguez's actions and the courage required to seek justice within a hierarchical military system. Colonel James Patterson was the first witness called by the prosecution. His testimony was precise and detailed, describing exactly what he had observed from the elevated observation deck. Patterson's credibility was unquestionable. His 30 years of military service and reputation for integrity made his account virtually unassailable. His description of the assault was clinical but powerful, establishing the baseline facts that would anchor the prosecution's case. Colonel Maria Santos followed Patterson to the witness stand, focusing her testimony on Mitchell's condition immediately after the assault and the professional manner in which she had responded to the trauma. Santos's testimony highlighted not only the physical impact of Rodriguez's action, but also demonstrated Mitchell's remarkable composure under extremely difficult circumstances. Her account reinforced the prosecution's narrative while providing insight into the broader implications of the incident. Colonel David Chen's testimony addressed the context surrounding the assault, describing the training environment and the breach of trust that Rodriguez's action represented. Chen's unique perspective, as an officer who had risen from enlisted ranks, allowed him to speak to the sacred nature of the relationship between leaders and subordinates in military culture. His testimony explained why Rodriguez's behavior was not just criminal, but fundamentally destructive to military effectiveness. Colonel Robert Williams provided the legal framework for understanding the charges, explaining how Rodriguez's actions violated not just military law, but the basic principles of military leadership. Williams's testimony connected the specific incident to broader issues of military discipline and the importance of maintaining standards of conduct at all levels of command. The recruit witnesses testified with remarkable consistency, their accounts corroborating the colonel's observations and providing additional detail about the events leading up to the assault. Several recruits described their shock and discomfort at witnessing the incident, explaining how Rodriguez's behavior had violated their expectations of military professionalism and leadership. Their testimony painted a picture of an officer who had lost control and violated the trust placed in him. Private Mitchell's testimony was the emotional centerpiece of the trial. She described the assault clearly and without embellishment, explaining how Rodriguez's escalating agitation had triggered memories of domestic violence from her childhood. Her account of maintaining military bearing despite being struck by her superior officer demonstrated remarkable strength and professionalism. She testified that while she had been physically and emotionally affected by the assault, her commitment to military service remained unshaken. During cross-examination, Vasquez treated Mitchell with respect, while attempting to establish the context of the training environment and any actions that might have contributed to Rodriguez's loss of control. Mitchell's responses were measured and honest, acknowledging that training had been intense, but firmly maintaining that nothing she had done justified the assault. Her composure during questioning reinforced the impression of her professionalism and character. The defense strategy centered on presenting Rodriguez as a dedicated soldier whose moment of poor judgment resulted from accumulated personal stress rather than fundamental character flaws. Vasquez called witnesses who testified to Rodriguez's previous exemplary service record, his dedication to training recruits, and the personal challenges he had been facing in the months leading up to the incident. Rodriguez's commanding officer from his previous assignment testified about his exceptional performance evaluations, his leadership skills, and his positive impact on young soldiers. This testimony was intended to establish that the assault was aberrant behavior for Rodriguez rather than part of a pattern of abuse or misconduct. A military psychologist testified about the effects of deployment, stress, family problems, and the challenges that career military personnel face when dealing with personal issues while maintaining professional responsibilities. The testimony provided context for Rodriguez's state of mind without excusing his behavior, painting a picture of a man struggling with pressures that had overwhelmed his usual self-control. Rodriguez's estranged wife testified via video conference, describing the changes she had observed in her husband following his most recent deployment. Her testimony revealed a man struggling with anger management, sleep problems, and emotional distance that had contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. While her account provided insight into Rodriguez's personal struggles, it also reinforced concerns about his fitness for leadership positions. Rodriguez himself took the stand, accepting full responsibility for his actions, while attempting to explain the circumstances that led to his loss of control. His testimony was emotional and appeared genuine, as he described the shame and regret he felt about striking Mitchell. He acknowledged that his personal problems provided no excuse for his behavior, and expressed his understanding that his actions had violated military values and betrayed the trust of those under his command. During cross-examination, Rodriguez admitted that he had been aware of his increasing stress and anger management problems, but had failed to seek help or remove himself from situations where he might lose control. This admission undermined any argument that the assault was unforeseeable or unavoidable, reinforcing the prosecution's position that Rodriguez's actions represented a conscious choice rather than an involuntary response to stress. The closing arguments encapsulated the broader themes that had emerged during the trial. Prosecutor Sullivan argued that Rodriguez's actions represented a fundamental violation of military values and the trust that subordinates must be able to place in their leaders. He emphasized that while Rodriguez's personal struggles were understandable, they could not excuse behavior that threatened the safety and dignity of those under his command. Defense attorney Vasquez acknowledged the seriousness of Rodriguez's actions, while arguing for leniency based on his previous service record and the circumstances that contributed to his loss of control. She emphasized that Rodriguez had accepted responsibility for his behavior and expressed genuine remorse for his actions. Her argument focused on the possibility of rehabilitation rather than the need for severe punishment. The military judge deliberated for 6 hours before returning to deliver the verdict. The courtroom was silent as Judge Hayes announced that Rodriguez had been found guilty on all charges. The conviction was expected given the overwhelming evidence, but it still marked the formal end of Rodriguez's military career and the beginning of his punishment phase. The sentencing phase of the trial focused on determining appropriate punishment for Rodriguez's crimes. The prosecution argued for severe penalties, including dismissal from service, forfeiture of pay and benefits, and confinement. Sullivan emphasized that lenient punishment would send the wrong message to the military community about the consequences of abusing subordinates. The defense presented mitigation evidence, including Rodriguez's service record, letters of support from former colleagues, and evidence of his acceptance of responsibility and commitment to rehabilitation. Vasquez argued that while punishment was necessary, it should be proportionate to the offense and allow for the possibility of redemption. Judge Hayes sentenced Rodriguez to reduction in rank to private, forfeiture of 2/3 of his pay for 6 months, confinement for 90 days, and dismissal from military service. The sentence was severe but not the maximum possible, reflecting both the seriousness of his crimes and recognition of his previous service. The dismissal ensured that Rodriguez would lose his military benefits and face significant challenges in civilian employment. The conviction and sentence sent shockwaves through the military community. Many viewed the outcome as proof that the military justice system could hold leaders accountable regardless of their rank or service record. Others worried about the precedent it set and the potential impact on military leadership and discipline. Mitchell's response to the verdict was measured and professional. In a statement read by her advocate, she expressed satisfaction that justice had been served, while acknowledging the tragedy of seeing a career soldier's life destroyed by a moment of poor judgment. Her statement emphasized her continued commitment to military service and her hope that the case would prevent similar incidents in the future. The 4 colonels who had witnessed the assault and initiated the response found their actions widely praised within military circles. Their quick and decisive response became a case study in military leadership and accountability. However, they remained focused on the lessons learned rather than any personal recognition, emphasizing that their actions represented what any military leader should do when witnessing abuse. The broader impact of the case extended far beyond the individuals directly involved. Military training programs incorporated the incident as an example of the importance of maintaining professionalism under stress and seeking help when dealing with personal problems that might affect job performance. The case also led to enhanced support systems for military personnel dealing with family problems, deployment stress, and other personal challenges. Rodriguez served his confinement at a military correctional facility, where he participated in anger management programs and counseling designed to help him understand and address the factors that led to his assault on Mitchell. His behavior during confinement was exemplary, and he expressed genuine remorse for his actions in letters to Mitchell that were never delivered at her request. Following his release from confinement and dismissal from service, Rodriguez faced the challenge of rebuilding his life as a civilian. His military conviction and dismissal made employment difficult, particularly in fields that required security clearances or positions of trust. He eventually found work in construction, a humbling transition from his previous role as a military leader. Mitchell completed her military training with distinction, graduating at the top of her class and earning recognition for her professionalism and leadership potential. Her response to the assault and subsequent legal proceedings had marked her as a soldier of exceptional character and resilience. She chose to specialize in military police work, driven partly by her experience with the justice system and her commitment to protecting others from abuse. The training ground where the assault occurred was renamed in honor of military victims of abuse, serving as a permanent reminder of the importance of maintaining dignity and respect in all military interactions. The memorial served as both a warning about the consequences of abuse and a tribute to the courage of those who seek justice within the military system. 5 years after the incident, Mitchell had advanced to the rank of sergeant and was serving as a trainer herself. Her approach to training was shaped by her experience with Rodriguez, emphasizing the importance of maintaining professionalism under stress and treating all personnel with dignity and respect. Her trainees consistently rated her as an exceptional instructor who combined high standards with genuine care for their development. Rodriguez had managed to rebuild parts of his life, working steadily in construction and participating in community service programs for veterans struggling with anger management and domestic violence issues. His work with these programs represented his attempt to find meaning and redemption in the aftermath of his catastrophic mistake. While he would never recover his military career or reputation, his efforts to help others avoid similar mistakes provided some measure of purpose. The case became a landmark in military justice, frequently cited in legal training and leadership development programs. It demonstrated that the military justice system could work effectively when leaders were committed to accountability and transparency. The swift response by the four colonels became a model for how military leadership should respond to abuse and misconduct. The incident also highlighted the importance of support systems for military personnel dealing with personal stress and family problems. The military implemented enhanced counseling services and early intervention programs designed to identify and assist personnel before their problems affected their professional performance or led to harmful behavior. The legacy of the training ground incident extended far beyond the immediate participants, influencing military culture and policy in ways that continued to evolve years after the original assault. It served as a powerful reminder that military values and discipline must be maintained at all levels, and that even exemplary service records cannot excuse fundamental violations of trust and human dignity. For Mitchell, Rodriguez, and the four colonels, the incident became a defining moment that shaped the rest of their lives and careers. It demonstrated both the destructive power of unchecked anger and stress, and the positive impact that courageous leadership and swift justice could have in protecting the vulnerable and upholding institutional values. The story continues to resonate within military communities as a testament to the importance of accountability, the courage required to seek justice, and the possibility of redemption through acceptance of responsibility and commitment to change. It remains a powerful reminder that in the military, as in all aspects of life, actions have consequences, and true leadership requires the moral courage to do what is right, regardless of the personal cost.